We're talking about unchecked aggression here,
What the
dude.
fuck is he talking
My
about?
rug.
Forget it, Donnie. You're out of your element.
Walter, the Chinaman who peed on my rug, I can't go give him a bill.
Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today I thought I would do a Patron question. Now, if you didn't know, I have just started up a Patreon and a Subscribe Star. These are basically there to supplement the income that I make through these videos to make sure that I can do them in the long run, and also to be able to create some giveaways and tournaments and stuff like that for the community that you are part of here. And through this, there is actually a tier on the Patreon where you can ask a Q&A question or suggest a video idea, and I thought, you know what, why not go through one today, just so you guys can kind of get an idea of what you can see, and also I can kill two birds with one stone and answer a very interesting question. So, let's get into it. Let's find the question itself. It's right here in a notepad link. This is from Blackie. So thank you, Blackie, for the Patreon support, and also thank you for the question. Hey TEC, have you ever thought about the idea to implement transport or cargo planes for ground realistic in War Thunder? They would have the ability to drop 4 small or 2 big resupply crates, maybe even more or less, depending on the size of the plane, on which you could get new ammo. Repair your vehicle, maybe even new FPE, of course only limited to the size of the crate. The ammo is only limited to the own team, the repairability and FPE replenish is even available for the team, and let's say you fight the Soviets, you could restore your ammo at the enemy crate if you drive a KV-1B because they use the same ammo. I would love to hear what you think about it. So the general idea is supply drops, giving you old or the same munitions that your vehicles have, including also maybe let's say an advanced repair, or maybe an extra FPE, or maybe they could give you smokes as well. That could be another one. Maybe they give you a little bit of a boost in a certain way when it comes to consumables, as I said, such as FPE and smoke grenades. Generally, I think this idea is kind of interesting. I would probably take out the last bit though, and try and just keep it so it is just an allied thing instead of just an enemy thing. But then again, it is an interesting idea to try and mix the ideas of the enemy and the allies. So let's say you drop a supply drop in an area which is dominated by the enemy and they capture it. Maybe they could get some ammo, or they could get some FPE and parts, or they could get some way of repairing their machines a bit more efficiently. One of the things that we have seen in War Thunder for a long time is the idea of capture zones. And what capture zones do is they increase your efficiency in repair. They also give you you know, ammunition. They also give you smoke grenades and all of this. And for me, I think it would be kind of cool if this was made more proactive, if it was made more, what would be the word, if you could kind of move the capture points around the map, because if you are a player who doesn't have parts and FPE, then what you want to do is drop one of these supply crates and be able to use it kind of like as that area or zone, so you can get yourself ammo now and get yourself repair. Now the problem with this is if you get somebody who's camping, then they could just keep dropping these crates, so you'd have to limit them in some way, such as they only give you a certain amount. Men of War Assault Squad 2 comes to mind, where you do have these ammo crates and you do have these crates full of munitions, whether it's for vehicles or whether it's for infantry, and they would have a limited supply. So with the crates talked about here, in this idea, you could definitely do it with a, you know, with as long as they had a limit on supplies, so you can just sit there the whole match and, you know, take off all the stuff from the crate. So let's go through some ideas which were similar to this in War Thunder in the past, which I believe have been taken out of the game. I haven't seen them in a very long time, but I think it's worth going through them, and then we'll go through my general thoughts on also how we could enact this system. My overall opinion is I like the idea of a progressive battlefield going forward, and also I like the idea of being able to resupply teammates, because, as I said, it gets rid of the burden between a stock grind and a fully spaded vehicle. One of the things that I've advocated a lot in the past and still advocate today is to try and make the grind between a stock vehicle and between a fully spaded one easier, because of the fact that there is a lot of certain circumstances where these are completely different vehicles. And even though you're playing the same one, add the same BR. So, let's get through it. Let's have a little bit of an interesting look. So the first one is about the D point. Now, the D point is kind of a mythical legend in War Thunder's history, because there is obviously a part of the commands which is attack the D point, but people are not sure where it's from, or at least some of the newer people to the game probably don't know where it's from. Well, the reason why we have an attack the D point is because there used to be a D point on specific maps. There was a map called Carpathians, which you can still get today. I believe it's called something different though. It's the map which looks like this, where you have the castle, or the ruined castle, on this side here, and then you have the fighting zone. You basically have a point here, a point here, and a point up here. And you fight around the 3 separate points. It's actually a really fun map, but you don't really see it at top tiers, or see it above, lower tiers at all. And I wish maybe they could do some experimenting with putting it at higher tiers, see how it goes. But yeah, that's the basic array of this map. And what used to happen is the D point could spawn. Now, it spawned in this idea of a crate, and this crate, if you captured it, would take away supplies from the enemy. Now, the areas I remember where it could spawn here, it could spawn here, and I believe there was one like around this area here, but I'm unsure about this one, so I'll just get rid of that. I definitely remember one spawning here and here, and the reason for it was if you got really close to it, you had to basically get on top of it, you could capture it really quickly. It would, as I said, increase the bleed that the enemy would have when it came to their spawn points, and so therefore it was quite a good objective to go for. On top of this, it was an objective which would appear and disappear over time. So within 5 minutes of the match going, it would just suddenly appear as an order, and it would say, hey, there's this point over here, go capture it, stuff like this. I think it would be much better if it actually gave you points instead of taking away from the enemy team's tickets. It would have been better if it increased yours, but overall, it was quite an interesting system. Now, what was the problem with this system? Well, the problem was, because it didn't spawn at the start of the match, because it spawned over 5 or 10 minutes into it, normally tank engagements, especially at mid to lower tier, are not really resolved after 5 or 10 minutes, but in the old system, remember, you had spawn points where it meant that a lot of the time you could only take 1 tank if you were knocked out early. So you would have, let's say, pushes from this side, the blue side, and what would happen is they would push all the way around here and then all the way around here, and they would secure this area in 5 minutes, meaning that they de facto got the D points and also had this zone and normally this zone. What it did was contribute to the snowball effect that was, the system when it came to it. So even though it was a cool system, the problem that it had is it benefited the team that was already winning, and therefore it just meant that you just won harder, and it was the same from the other side as well. You could do the same over here. If you captured the castle, then taking this point was very easy to do. So overall, great idea, but the problem was it was unbalanced, because whoever was winning would already get the points, and if you really wanted to do it properly and do this D point idea properly, you would have to try and somehow make it in favor of the team that was losing, so that therefore they could use it as a comeback mechanic. But unfortunately, that's not how it was. Now, so when we, so let's just do that. So here are a few references to the D points. This is from the Guard Pilot Officer in 2018. The D point was used to appear as certain orders, but haven't seen it for a while. Yeah, I haven't seen it for ages either. And then this is the D point with a few memes, and then as you can see, a explanation from Canadian Bassist. On some maps, most notably Carpathians, there is occasionally a D point spawned halfway through the game that consists of a box of supplies. When captured, provides a one-time ticket reduction for the opposing team. Afterwards the point disappears. To be honest, I haven't seen it in a while. It used to be really common and appear almost every Carpathians match. So this is what he's talking about here on Carpathians. And yeah, it did. It used to spawn all the time, and it just seems like they've scrapped the mechanic. So when we talk about a mechanic like this that we see here, we're pretty much taking the idea that we had put here, but instead switching it around. So instead of taking tickets away from the enemy team, it gives you resources, and you also control where it drops. And for me, I think this would be a perfect solution for it, because it would mean that you could drop supplies around you. You could do it kind of like a kill streak, or it would cost you a certain amount of spawn points. I think would be the best way of doing it in War Thunder. Like, let's say you have like 900 spawn points, you've done really well, annihilated the whole enemy team, and they're coming back in their second wave, because obviously they reduce spawn points on, on tanks. So the second wave's coming, you're low on ammunition, maybe you've used your FPE because you've been in a rough fight, you need some crew replenishment. Well, how about, it costs 200 or 300 SP to drop in a box that can give you a new crew member, give you, increased repair, and also give you like an extra FPE. So see it as, if you do well, you get rewarded. And I think that sounds good, and it's not something that would be the same as the one that we had before, because it wouldn't be taking something from the enemy team that is already losing. It would be giving a beneficial idea to the team that is winning. And the difference there is that this beneficial idea means that, yes, they will do better against the enemy team, but they have earned that, instead of just increasing the snowball, which is something that a lot of mechanics in ground forces do. So overall, I like the idea, and the building blocks are there. We do have the D point idea. All you would have to do is change it so it becomes an ability instead of something that just appears on the map. Do we have planes, you may ask, to actually, drop these things off? Obviously, in War Thunder, in the CDK, we do have files such as the C-47 that you see here. Then we have the FAU one, which is it's a rocket, so let's not get into that. But you also have the Ju-52. You have this machine here, which could be used for transport, it could be used for paratroopers, and then you have, of course, the IL-2 as well. So you do have these machines in the game. They are, planes in the files, and they're used in single missions mainly. I'm not sure if they're used anywhere else, but they are assets to use. They have full models. You have the models, you have the skeleton of them, you have the damage models. You have parts of them as well, you have pylons, you have all of this stuff for these machines right here, right? So they do exist in their entirety and could be used to go over a ground forces map and drop a package. Maybe, you could decrease the accuracy so it doesn't just drop straight on your head, but as a care package, it could work very well with these aircraft. Now, if you want to find these aircraft, you actually find them in single missions. Oh, by the way, just as a point, I've really enjoyed the OF-40. When I talked about it, when we first looked at it, I was kind of worried about it because I saw it as a worse Leopard. Well, it is a worse Leopard, but the main thing is from it is it's still very good. Like, the Leopard 1 tank is a great vehicle, the OF-40 is also a great vehicle, so even though it's slightly worse than the Leopard, it's still great, It's just one of those things. So yeah, if you haven't checked out the Italian tree, I've been having a lot of fun at rank 5, and hopefully it continues. Anyway, so if you go to single missions, you will find specific missions which use these aircraft. So you can see here, you have a ton of different missions here that you can see. And then if you go to the Western Front, this is the most obvious one that I can find, and go to the Battle of the Bulge and the Siege of Bastogne, what you'll find is you use an ME-262A-1A, and you have to prevent relief supplies from reaching the surrounding American 101st Airborne Division. Now those relief supplies are being carried by C-47s. So all of this technology, all of this mechanic is in the game, apart from the fact that you have to, instead of, having a desired point or a direct point that the C-47 has to get to, instead you have to mark on the map where you want the C-47 to drop. So it's all there. It's all in the game code, or the mechanic is technically there. You just have to modify it to add in like the artillery strike mechanism where, it drops where the player says it does, right? So it's all there. The building blocks are there for this, which sounds absolutely wonderful. And as I said, I like the idea of having some kind of maneuverable capture points, so therefore you can actually repair even if you're not near your base. Or even if you're not near a capture point. One of the greatest changes for me that happened to War Thunder over the last few years was when they introduced the arcade mechanics in realistic, or at least, similar arcade mechanics to realistic, where if you get hit in the engine, or whether you get hit in the transmission or the breech, it will kind of repair to a very low percentage of efficiency. So your engine, if it gets hit, it will take time, but it will repair to like 10 or 15% its full capacity. This means that if you do get hit by a stray round or an artillery piece, then, and if you don't have parts, then you can still be combat effective in some kind of way. And as I've said, I want to reduce the difference between a stock vehicle and a spaded vehicle, as long as Gaijin keeps their stance that they don't want vehicles changing BR depending on how many modifications that they have. If they keep that stance, we have to somehow lessen the distance between them, and this would be a way to do it through this care package system. Now I know a lot of people would think this is kind of arcadey, but there would be times in history where in battles, maybe not as the battle is raging on, but during downtimes, there would be supply drops that happen. One we just literally brought up, the Bastogne, the Bastogne offensive. It was very, very crucial that the Germans attacked when they did, because, as you know, because of cloud cover and stuff like that, the air operations around the area definitely took a hit, and supplies were hard to get to when it came to Bastogne because of the winter, because of the adverse conditions. But once the conditions lightened up, once the clouds and everything else dissipated, such as the weather, supply drops were able to rain in. So technically, it is a historical idea. When a battle is raging on, it would be very surprising to get supply drops in the middle of it, but in the downtime between them, yes, there would be supply drops, which would happen. So see it as you've made the initial hit, you've won the initial hit, you've gained enough SP to get these points, and then you push him forward to be able to be able to get to the supply drop that you've called in. You call it in, you get yourself some FP, you get yourself some increased repair, you get yourself a crewman back and some ammo and some smoke grenades, and then you can push on to the next thing. I think this sounds wonderful. It sounds like a great idea, as long as we can put in the mechanic. And obviously, you would test this in arcade to see if it works. You could use the same system as we have in the aircraft in arcade, where if you get one kill or one, one team point, whatever you want to call it, you get a fighter, 2 team points an attacker, 3 team points a bomber. Why not have like a number of points where you can call in a supply drop instead? And then if it works well in arcade, transfer it to realistic, just like they did with artillery, where in artillery in arcade you have 3 strikes. If you have 3 team points, or if you kill 3 people, then you can use artillery 3 times over and over. Where in realistic you have like a timer that you have to wait for. why not add this same system to the cargo thing, apart from also add a cost to it, which would be SP. I think this sounds absolutely wonderful. And one thing I also want to point out while talking about this is, let's go here. There's a guy called OD_IN on War Thunder Live, and he makes these wonderful massive maps when it comes to the images. So you can see here is update 1.87, and these will be used for guides, wiki articles, examples, and mini maps. So yeah, you can download all of these and you can get some wonderful HD renditions of what the maps look like. You can see here, and he's done every update all the way back. All you have to do is download this and it'll give you all the maps out of the updates. So here's an example of one that he has. This is Abandoned Factory, right? And I want to use this as kind of an example of how I see it working. So let's put the points in first. The point is here, and then the point is here, and then the point is here, right? So you have two teams. You have a yellow side who spawns here, and then you have the other side that spawns here and here. So to me, let's just get rid of that. The way I see it working is, let's say a blue side pushes this area, right, which they normally do. They push this area through the factory, and you get a few guys who push through here, a few guys who push through here, and then the yellow side pushes into here, pushes into here in this area, and then tries to push through here, and then also tries to push through here, right? Those are the general ways that you see the north of the battle going. Now, let's say the blue side wins the initial battle. So they win the initial battle, but they're heavily damaged. And these guys have pushed to here, and they're basically spawn camping the guys here. These guys are pushed onto the point, and they're going here. These guys are thinking, well, we better go south and try and deal with the issues there, and these guys are trying to work out what to do. What happens if you also add in an area or add in a supply drop like here, right? Or somebody calls in a supply drop here. This would slightly halt the advance, or probably here's a better place. This would slightly halt the advance, but it would mean that you have a choice to make. Do you wait, get fully repaired, get your crew back, get ammo back, or do you move on quickly? Or do you just go to the point, right? Because, so therefore you can see it adds another level to the dynamic gameplay that we have. You know, Abandoned Factory is still a small map, but you can still see there are areas where you would like to have a supply drop, which compared to sitting on the point, which is kind of in the open, you know, you would rather be there and, you know, have, as I said, that supply drop. The better place to actually talk about on this map, if we go to it, I think, can I make this smaller? Yeah, there we go. So, the blue side attacking this point is a nightmare, right? So, going through this area, or going through this area, or going through this area, or going through this area here. All a nightmare for the blue side. And for the yellow side, it's kind of easy. You know, you have through here, you can go through here, you can push this way, or you can go this way and die. So there's multiple ways that people can go to each place, but the question is, once you've taken this point, you either have to push through what I'll call a very rough area to push through, especially if people are waiting for you. You have to push through here, or you have to push through this area here. Now, what if you could set up a defensive position, which instead of around these areas, it would be like you could set up here, or you could set up here, or here. Sorry about this. After going through the edit of the video, I realized that OBS decided to annihilate itself. And I think it's because I'm using this pen tool thing, but I'm going to keep using it anyway. So I'll repeat what I said, even though you haven't seen it yet. So let's get the points sorted accordingly and work from there. The first thing when we have a look at these kind of things is to obviously give examples, which is what I was doing. Now, unfortunately, it seems like the examples were kind of overwritten, so let's just go through them once again. The main points I'm basically trying to get to when it comes to these ideas is I want to create a different way of playing through them instead of just the similar ideas which we have dealt with for such a long time. One of the things about Ground Forces is because it's been out for, what is it, 4 years at this point? Especially with older maps, there are definitely defined metas. And what this means is, well, you can play the same map over and over and over again, and it can feel exactly the same over and over and over again because people do the same things. There is a most efficient way of playing stuff, and the only different variations you sometimes get is if people want to try different specific things, or they want to try and counter the meta, but generally that doesn't work too well. So on the top of the map, these are the general areas that you see people going in, and so what we're going to do is have a look from the top. If you push across, what happens? How would a supply drop benefit you in this way? So let's say the yellow team on this side gets annihilated and the blue team is able to push forward. So these guys push to here. These guys normally will push here. Normally these guys will push here, or they'll push here, right? And the issue with Abandoned Factory is that up here, you can spawn camp this area, which is just sat, in this, which is just sat around here, which is not fun for the enemy team that has to deal with it. It's basically here because you have to go past this point, or you have to go past this point, or you have to go past this point, and it's easy to cover those three angles from this individual position where this blue side is sitting. So what if, as a team, on the defending side, you had one guy who had a supply crate? What if he dropped it, like here, or what if he dropped it here? So you could fight around this corner, and if you get hit, and if you get hit hard, you would still have the ability to repair quicker, get some more FPE, get some more crew, maybe some ammo, and use it as a point of strength, so it will make it easier for you to push forward and counter the attacks that you've already lost, counter the general snowball effect. From the other side, you could generally do the same thing, right? So let's say you've taken heavy losses, but you've taken the zone. You could put in a supply drop here, you could put in a supply drop here, or maybe here, or even up top here. And once you put it in, and it comes in, you can resupply and then use it to push forward and annihilate the enemy spawn around this area. Or you could use it to push this way, down the map and actually win the game. So there you can see the different scenarios where this this idea would be useful. You can either use it in defense to try and hold an area, you can use it in offense to resupply to attack that second wave, because remember, in War Thunder, now that they reduced a lot of the SP costs of a lot of vehicles, normally what you see now is the idea that you have to not necessarily wait for a second wave, but you should understand that a second wave is coming of, people. I just want to make sure that everything is good. Looks like it's working. Awesome. So let's just get rid of all of this. Let's talk about a different scenario and why there is a counter to this idea. So I've talked about it a lot here of people doing it how you would follow the system properly. So what this means is you would, follow the system as if you are attacking, you would use it in an aggressive way to gain munitions and FPE and then push forward with it. In a defensive way, you would use it to hold an area, so you would kind of, in a way, defend the box while it was giving you, munitions and FPE and all of this stuff, and also the allies that you have around you. But what if you used it in different ways? What if you used it in a ruse idea? So if you don't know what a ruse is, there's a wonderful game called Ruse based around World War II. Really awesome game. I wish it wasn't pulled from sale. I think you can still get it on Amazon, but that's the only place that you can get it. I have it on Steam. I've actually played through it on the channel if you want to have a look at it. But let's say you have a plane coming in because somebody has called in a spot not there because I've screwed it up. Let's say somebody calls in a a box in this area here, right? And the reason why they've called it in is to try and garner some more munitions. So the plane comes in on this angle, because obviously, as we talked about before, you have the C-47s, you have the Ju-52s, so all they have to do is create like a circular ring formation around the place, and just do it like that, and just correspond it with the airfield that we have on the map. So let's say the C-47 spawns above the airfield, and then it comes in. Obviously the timings would have to be worked out, so all of that stuff does matter, but we could work that out at a later date. Right now we're just talking about the core mechanic and its general uses. So the first thing would be, so he brings it in, right? He brings it in for this point, to try and be as, as sneaky as possible, trying to repair stuff. What if he sees, because he's sat here, right? If he's sat in this area, or maybe he's sat in this area, what if the enemy team sees him bringing in the supply, and they decide to push through this area, because they know that people normally drop supplies on their head. Well, what this does is if he brings it here and they start pushing to try and get those beautiful supplies, he has a kill shot, either here or either here. So you could use it in a ruse way. You could use it not to actually garner resources, but use it to get the team interested in where you are. Kind of like how artillery strikes work. When you see an artillery strike across the map, you either think an enemy is there, or you think, an ally is there, depending on what you see on the map. On top of this, it's the same way when you see machine gun fire, or it's the same way when you see smokes. You know that an enemy is there, you just can't fully see them. So this would be used in a similar way. So you don't just have to use it in the normal way, you also have the idea of a ruse, right? That could be something that is employed. On top of this, you have another idea, and the idea is the counter to it. So what is the counter to to this idea? Well, first of all, you can overrun the supply point and annihilate it, right? That could be one way of doing it. The other way is, if you haven't noticed, C-47s, Ju-52s, IL-2s, I believe they're called, or something similar. Basically, the Soviet C-47 retrofitted. What do they all have in common? They have pretty much no armament, and on top of this, they also are not the fastest machines in the world. So what we have to do is shoot them down. It's as simple as that. Whether you're in a plane, whether you are in an AA, this gives you target practice when you actually have to deal with specific players. And if you give them a linear pattern, as I've shown here, it should be quite easy to shoot them down in order for them to come in. So there is a counter to this mechanic. It's either in the form of AA, or it's in the form of other planes, or maybe even machine guns, depending on how dodgy you want to make the damage models. All of these transport aircraft already in game have damage models. They all have flight models, they all have damage models. As I said, they're represented in the single missions that you see. So it wouldn't be too hard putting them into this mechanic. You're pretty much, as I said, mixing the Baston idea with the artillery idea. That's all you're doing here. So mixing them together and also giving them a counter, which is to actually just shoot down the plane, kind of like how I've talked about paratroopers in the past and they're realistic. It's all possible. It all makes sense in my head to be able to do. So overall, I love this idea. I think it's really cool. It gives you a way of using it offensively. It gives you a way of using it defensively. You can use it, honestly, or you can use it in a ruse sense. Everything sounds great from it, as long as there is some SP cost tied to it, so people can't just spam them in all the time. And on top of this, people can't give them to the enemy. One of the things that in War Thunder, at least I've been having conversations about over the last few days, is the idea of griefing, and how griefing can be incredibly annoying when it comes to War Thunder. So ways to stop griefing, in my opinion, should be applied. And the way to stop that would be to not give the enemy team supplies. It would be kind of as simple as that. But if you can give the enemy team supplies, then you're going to get a squadron of 4 guys just chucking them at the enemy, just having fun with them. But overall, I really like the idea. I think it can be used in a bunch of different ways. I don't think it adds too much to the snowball effect. It rewards people for doing well, and it can be used in different ways, just like smoke can, where, in my opinion, a lot of people use smoke in the wrong way. You're supposed to use it proactively instead of reactively in War Thunder. A lot of people use it in a reactive way, whereas if you use it in a proactive way, you can be incredibly aggressive with it, and you can move around and do really well. But as I said, the majority of people don't. Overall, though, thank you, Blackie, for this question. I think it's an absolutely wonderful one which should be looked into. I might even write a forum post about it, the past two consideration ideas. And also, as I said before, if you have an idea for videos that you want me to see, there is a Patron available. There is Patreon, available, a Subscribe Star as well if you don't like Patreon or if you don't like Subscribe Star. They're both in the description. Please have a look at the perks and stuff that are available. There is a ton of stuff on offer if you're interested. And overall, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Blackie for the support on Patreon.